You in the interim.
Good morning, everyone.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for coming. My name is Patty Reyna, and I'm the Coordinator of Education and Outreach for Achieva Family Trust. So I'm really happy to see all of you here. We have quite a few people listening online as well. So welcome. This is a very important topic. Wanting to work and being concerned about losing any vital government benefits is such an important topic, and we're really excited to have a panel of experts here to talk about how you can work and keep your government benefits. We have Josie Badger, who's the campaign manager for IWantToWork, Marci Katona, the area Marci Katona is from OVR, Joyce Smith from AHEDD, and our own Bill Frase from Achieva. So they're going to give a short presentation, and they'll each take some time, and then they thought maybe at the end it might be easier if you wait till the end to ask questions, so please be sure and jot down some questions. They all brought some material as well, so please be sure to grab some handouts before you leave today. And then just a couple housekeeping things. The restrooms are on the other side of this wall, so you can go out the back door or the front door. There's bagels and coffee in the back. And at the end of the presentation, if you haven't already gotten a survey, I have two different surveys, one if you're a family member and one if you're a caregiver. We are able to do these programs, these speaker programs, because of a grant we have from the United Way of Southwestern Pennsylvania. So we ask everyone to fill out a survey, and it really helps us, know what people are interested in hearing about, how we can improve our programs. So please, if you could take a minute, it just takes a couple minutes to fill that out at the end, that would be great. And I think that's about it. So I'll let our speakers get started. They will stay, for the people online, when the questions do come up, I'll have the speaker or whoever's answering the question repeat the question back so they can, so you can hear the question online. And for those listening online, you can ask questions as well. So please feel free to, go into the chat box in the corner. Okay? So thank you. We're going to start with Josie, I guess.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Josie Badger. I'm going to frame this discussion by talking about my own situation, my struggle with benefits, and how, at least at the moment, things are working out. So, as I said, I have my doctorate in healthcare ethics, but I also have my master's in rehab counseling. And I always kind of thought I was fairly intelligent, and then I tried to balance benefits and work. And it doesn't actually matter how smart you are. To do it, you need support. And so I'm pretty complex here. So I've had nurses my entire life under first my parents' insurance and then under a waiver. OVR has been a buddy of mine since I started college. OVR helped to pay for my college, part of my master's, some van modifications, and they also helped pay for personal care attendance through undergrad and my master's. So starting off, OVR really set me up to be successful, and through my master's, I really didn't struggle that much. I was going to school full-time, and I had just a little part-time job that basically kept me under the income limit. But then the problem happened whenever I was going into my doctorate and graduating. I kind of, for some reason, assumed that having my doctorate, I'd make money. That was kind of funny. And it's not true at all. I thought, I'm going to make all this money, and so how am I going to do this? So I opened my own business called Ssdi Benefit Consultant, which I still have. But during all this, I kind of did it on my own, thinking, once again, I have my doctorate. I should be able to figure this out. So I started this business, it was going well, and then 3 years in, the woman who was filing my taxes screwed up. But it made me aware of the problem. What happened is I have what is called an S Corp, and that doesn't matter for you guys, but What matters is the money in that account for the business is actually considered my money at the end of the year. Okay, and that's a big problem when you're looking at Social Security or Medicare, Medicaid, and I had no idea. And I knew that I had this asset limit of $2,000. I knew that I couldn't personally own or make more than, at that point, it was $1,040 a month. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to jail. And so that's when the whole show, crap show started. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to talk to. I had started my business on my own, and first I called the Social Security office, local branch, and they're like, well, you're fine. I was like, no, I know I'm not fine. So I started writing letters to them and saying, hey, I have an S Corp. Here's the money I have. I'm not eligible. And I started doing that with our local county assistant office. And I was at that point on my dad's Social Security disability. So I was getting Medicare and Medicaid. And they said, you're fine. That's business income, no problem. Sometimes you just can't believe people when things sound like they're working out. You're like, I don't think so. Keep looking, because there's probably something wrong. So I continued to try to find answers. I went to Achieva. I went through the family trust. I went through a legal system. Ended up spending $9,000 to try to figure out what was legal, what wasn't. And at the end of the day, here's where I am at. I still have my business. I really need to sell off some of the business because I own all of it. So when you own all of it, that means you have all the money at the end of the year is counted as yours. So I probably have to sell some of this stuff. I got on medical assistance for workers with disabilities, which gives me quite a bit more leeway. I had to learn the fun numbers of you count half of your income minus 30. It's this crazy math problem to figure out what you can earn and still get insurance. But one thing I really learned during this is you sometimes assume that your local assistance offices, Social Security should know some of the support or loopholes to protect you. They don't. And so I also had to go through the Health Law Project to work with them to understand if I get medical assistance for workers with disabilities, I can stay on my waiver. For me, that was a big deal. My waiver pays for my nurses, some of my medical equipment, my personal care attendant. Without the waiver, I could not live on my own. And so I had gotten a letter after I'd done all of this work to prove, like, hey, I'm trying to be legal here. I want to make things right. I got a letter that said, oh, you no longer have your waiver, sorry. And I had to go through a lawyer who knew that, under Section 9, page blah, 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 I get a waiver. And so right now, I've had to pay back a few months of my Social Security. I do have medical assistance for workers with disabilities and my waiver. I pay, about almost $100 a month for that insurance, but it basically pays for everything that I need. So the big part of that is ask people who know. Don't assume that Social Security or medical assistance actually knows, make sure to go back to Achieva, OVR, all these places who have done this and specifically work to help people with disabilities. Make sure that they're on board before you start a business, before you start making millions of dollars. That's not happening, but it's a thing. And that's really vital for all of us. As was mentioned, I am the campaign manager for the hashtag IWantToWork campaign. And that campaign is right now working on a bill that we hope will encourage the legislators, the agencies to work together to improve employment for people with disabilities. It's called Employment First Pennsylvania. And part of this bill will get to get people at the state level talking, creating incentives to improve employment outcomes. And that's one of my jobs. And it was so hard for me to go and represent this when I was terrified to work. I was terrified of losing my own benefits. How am I going to tell some graduating kid, go get a job, you might go to jail, I don't know, I'm sorry. It was hard. And so I think that for me, this opened my eyes to the fact that everyone actually needs support, whether you're working at Giant Eagle or you have your own business. Starting with the support and the right people in the game will help you in the long run. So.
Great.
Turn to you.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Marci, Katona, and I'm the District Administrator at our Pittsburgh Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, Bureau of Vocational Rehab Services. I want to make a couple comments just in transitioning from Josie's story to OVR, but before I say that, I just want to give you a general understanding of who I am, who I represent as far as our office. OVR is part of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry. Within our Office of Vocational Rehab, we have two bureaus, and I mentioned the bureau I represent, the Bureau of Vocational Rehab Services. But we also have, and I'll say oftentimes we are known as OVR, and our other bureau is the Bureau of Blindness and Visual Services. Together, our two bureaus make up OVR. We have 21 district offices across the state. Pittsburgh is considered the largest office in the state. Yes, we do hold that title next to Philadelphia because of number of customers we serve and number of staff that we have on board to provide those services. We are, when we're full, and I'll say as many organizations have some challenges with staffing, when we're full, we have 97 people that work within my bureau. We have about 60 direct line staff that are out in the community, which, I'll share just a little bit on how that works as I talk with you this morning. But our mission is to assist individuals with disabilities prepare for, obtain, maintain employment and independence. And I think as you listen to Josie, those words, I think both of those words came through in her story and her journey of reaching employment and independence. And I think the biggest thing that Josie shares is that you've been involved with OVR at different points through your journey, and it's certainly important to talk about. And we have a mission. Our goal is employment through the VR program. But I think we meet many people within that you can't do it in a vacuum. Employment is one piece, and independence is obtained through coordination of all of these things. And we can't do it by ourselves, and we need each other. We know a whole lot about vocational rehab and services people can benefit from even before going to work, but we don't know a whole lot about the benefits and how that can impact, working can impact. So we have to reach out and work with our providers. You know, Bill and I have worked together for years, so that's really important, and we're really committed to that as an organization and as an agency. In Pittsburgh, as far as our mission, we are in a really amazing time as far as vocational rehab, and that is for a couple reasons. One, Josie mentioned employment first. Two, which is really big, is the Reauthorization of the Rehabilitation Act, which is what guides our program, what guides the money and services out there available for individuals. And key things in the reauthorization is that we are, focused even more so, we've always been, but even more so on serving individuals, students with disabilities transitioning, from secondary education to post-secondary education or employment and adult services, all of that transition as you move from high school setting into the adult world. And, we are to, of our budget, we're to invest 15% of our funds to assist students in high school. And we're doing that, and we're doing that really well in Pittsburgh. Are we doing it perfectly? Nope. And we'll continue to work to achieve that, but we're doing some really great things. And I have shared stuff up here for all of you, our brochures and information on the different parts to our services. But we start working with individuals at age 14, and that then carries out through adulthood. As long as anyone is interested in needing our services to benefit, to work and prepare for work and can benefit from that, we are there. At age 14, we are working closely with, we have social work staff on board, and we're working closely with the high schools, and we're providing what's called pre-employment transition services to individuals. And those services can come in a couple different ways. One is through group setting, working on things like self-advocacy, independent living, work readiness, all things that I think, Josie, you alluded to, you have a little bit of, but the other thing too is, and we've all been there or are there, at the same time of working and understanding disability, we're young and we're kids and we're trying to, figure out ourselves, so we may or may not be ready to take all that on. So from OVR, we're really trying to, wrap our arms around that and make sure that those kind of supports are in place in partnership with education, because education has a role certainly under the requirements under the Department of Ed to allow folks to get those experiences. In addition to that, we're also looking at paid work experiences for individuals who are still in high school, because, statistics say if you've worked before you leave a high school setting, whether you have a disability or not, and even more so when you have a disability, you're much more likely to continue to benefit and be successful in the workplace and in independence. So we have opportunities that we're doing that now. We have a lot of school-based and youth initiatives, which I could certainly share more with that with all of you too. I want you to make sure on the flyers, we're on Facebook, we're social media, we have Instagram, Twitter. Our application now is online, which I have a handout on how to access that. So we really want to be accessible to everyone. As far as our eligibility process, specifically for individuals who are receiving SSI or SSDI, OVR's eligibility, it is an eligibility-based program. Well, let me first say, people that are in high school, students that are in high school are considered potentially eligible. As long as they identify as having a disability, whether through self-identifying, they have an IEP or a 504 plan, they're potentially eligible. they automatically will be able to access our pre-employment transition services. As we transition through high school in that continuum, individuals will then, and we hope that this is a natural progression into our VR program, which then is based off of eligibility. And eligibility is a few things. One, you have to have a presence of impairment, and two, that impairment has to affect you in different areas of life: self-care, mobility, independent communication, sensory communication, things like that around the disability that may or may not, have an effect as you prepare for employment. And the third thing is that our services need to be a fit for you. They make sense to you. You can benefit from them to move yourself forward. Individuals receiving Social Security, SSI or SSDI, are presumed eligible with VR. We do still have to, we still do have to identify and, review some information, but because you've already been reviewed through Social Security, we have that presumed eligibility. Part of our process now, and this is where we get into our collaboration here with Joy at AHEDD, is that in order for folks who are receiving benefits with us, we have a built-in requirement that we refer for benefits counseling. That way, and I think this really comes into play, we meet a lot of people who are afraid. They're like, I want to go to school, and I know VR has all these supports, and maybe we're looking at assistive technology, and you talked about vehicle modifications and things that are really costly, that VR is there because of that, and we have the great resources to accomplish that. But at the end of the day, there's some of those really big, important concerns about what does this mean? I need, X, Y, and Z in addition to working, and if I lose that because I go to work, we face that. And we, as our counseling staff, we get frustrated and worried for our folks because, we can see the potential and we want to help, prepare that, and we need a resource to make that happen. So what we've done, and we've been working on this with Joy and AHEDD on this for a while now, is that we have a process where we refer in we do a session for folks with SSI and SSDI, and Joy and her team actually comes to the OVR office, and our folks come to a session to learn about their benefits. And then, if we need individual supports beyond that, we can coordinate that as well. And it's really been great, and I think, we have seen and had successes of folks really who weren't real sure how this was all going to play out, find the answers and be able to work through some of the things you shared as well. Just a little bit more just in terms of OVR, we work with, the other thing I wanted to share with you is part of the law that changed a couple years ago was that the focus on competitive integrated employment for folks who, with most significant disabilities, we've already been doing that, but specifically focused on individuals who may be, may be thinking about or may have already had experience working in a sub-minimum wage work environment. So we have responsibility to work with individuals with intellectual disabilities to help understand and prepare them for opportunities to work competitively in the community. I talked about my staff. I have 58 counselors who are tied. I just want to give you a sense of where we are in the community so that as we maybe do Q&A and we talk later, I make sure that we fill in gaps that maybe we may not be. Our folks right now we're in the high schools. We're working with supports coordination units. We have a partnership with the Office of Intellectual Disability. We also have a partnership with all of our providers. Achieva is one of them. We really are making sure that, we're finding people where they are in their current journey towards employment, and making sure then we connect to the right resources to do that. We have VR counselors, and then I talked about our social workers. Those we call on staff early reach coordinators, and they are working with our high schools to help students and families understand the benefits of working with OVR and also gaining those pre-employment skills at the same time. So that's OVR in a nutshell. I certainly, as we could speak on any specific thing in general, but the other thing I wanted to talk about is that part of our eligibility process is that some folks with questions, as Josie brought up, is like, I don't know if this is for me. Should I be, jeopardizing what I'm currently receiving in benefits and what I need to stay independent to work, X amount of hours a week at X amount of wage. You'll see up here we have information about our business services. We're working really hard with employers to create sustainable, opportunities for individuals to find employment within our, within the community and the region that we have, so that the job opportunities are at a level that are worthwhile for folks to make that choice. The other thing too I wanted to say is that I lost my train of thought. There was one other thing I just wanted to note on that.
It'll come to you.
It'll come to me. Our business team. Oh, I don't remember what it was. Probably as Joy's talking, I'll think of it.
Interject.
But we really. Oh, I know what it was. I knew it would come to me. So, as part of our process, there are opportunities with us to do trial work experiences, so that we're not, and I think Joy, you'll really hit more on this too as you talk. Like, there are ways to assess and evaluate how working and moving towards in some cases a full-time income that eventually you will go transition out of benefits is worthwhile. So that's part of OVR, and that's how we look at that. I think a big question people come to us when we start talking with them about what benefits do you receive and what's your income. We ask a lot of questions. We're the state, paperwork. It's wish we could get around some of that stuff, but we can't. People get worried, like, oh, are you just talking to you, is that going to affect me? And absolutely, we are never going to, it's customer choice. I mean, our responsibility is to help folks understand how our services can benefit them towards the route they want to go. So we're never going to, adversely affect, someone in their situation. And I think that's scary because we're the government, right? So that's something I want everyone to know is that we're working for you. We're working for your best interest and what, makes sense to you. And our job is to find everyone that makes sense in your life. I mean, Josie, you talked about county assistance office, your Medicare, your Medicaid, the benefits. You had, your accountant. This is life. This is the pieces. As the case management part with OVR, we really need to be aware of that so that we can make the right information and referrals to you that we can't, be an expert on. So, again, that's us there. I have a lot of information from the different points of entry with OVR, too. I also wanted to note, and I think, Patty, you made copies of, we have online pre-application process now. So even though we have a lot of liaisons in the community, Anyone can apply at any time, and it's now online, and people can access it, and it'll come right into our office. So there's some information up there on it as well for you to take a look at. I'll turn it over to Joy.
All right. Well, my name is Joy Smith, and I'm the area manager for AHEDD. I'm what's known as a community work incentive coordinator. And I'm going to get up because if I keep turning around like this, I'll have a neck problem by the end of the day. And as I'm getting older, those things tend to bother me more. So, AHEDD is a specialized human resource organization. And what I'm here to talk about today is promoting employment among Social Security beneficiaries. There's my contact information, and I think Patty did have a printout for everyone on the slides. Feel free to reach out to me and follow up. We'll have time for questions today, but if something, is specific to you and you don't want to disclose that in a group, I completely understand that. You can always email me and just say, hey, I saw you at Achieva on, Friday the 13th, and then that'll ring a bell for me because I do teach and talk to a lot of people. Don't think my voice is very...
not in the noise.
So, okay. Should I stand closer?
You're good now.
Okay. All right. I tend to yell a lot. I have a son and a husband, so... and no one listens to me. So, like I was saying, feel free to reach out to me to go over some things because what I'd like to say is what I'm going to go over today is very general information. This is the basics of Social Security benefits and going back to work. Everyone's specific situation is different. So we need to look at that and see, like Josie's case, everyone's, from that complex of an issue to someone working at Giant Eagle, working 20 hours a week at $8, $9 an hour. So it really needs to be looked at on an individual basis. That's just about our agency. The one thing I did want to point out is we have been doing this benefits counseling since 2001. So we've been around for a while to offer this service. Back in 2001, and I did start with the program back then, Social Security said that they wanted to encourage more people to go back to work. That's how this came about. My services are funded by the Social Security Administration through something called the Ticket to Work, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But, a lot of times in the beginning, and still now, people would see me coming and they're like, oh, I don't want to talk to that lady because she's going to take away my benefits. She's going to go make me work and I'm going to lose everything. And, I can understand that completely. I need my X amount of dollars coming in each month to pay my bills, so I completely get that. But really what Social Security wanted to do, and this is more at a federal level whenever they started these whole programs, they wanted to encourage people to go back to work. And, you could look at this that they wanted to help people and, encourage individuals to do the best they could, and I do believe they wanted to do that. But it's the government, and, we need to have so much money coming in through our government. So a bottom line with this is it's not so much that Social Security wants people to lose their benefits. They want people who are able to contribute back into the system. So whether you're, have your own business or you're, a cashier at Giant Eagle, you're paying taxes, you're putting money back into the system, which in turn helps more people on Social Security benefits, helps the state out, helps Medicaid out, and it trickles down through providers, through Achieva and other agencies to be able to help more people. So really that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to encourage people, hey, if you can go out and make $500 a month and you do that forever, you'll still get some of your Social Security benefits, that's okay, but you're contributing back in. So that took a while to get moving through there. But what we want to do is really change the way individuals think about this, because I can't even tell you how many calls I've taken that people call me and say, how much can I make before I lose my benefits? What's that magic number? And there are these magic numbers out there. But really what you want to think about is I want to work and be better off financially. I mean, that's the goal of everyone who works. I mean, you want to do whatever you want to do in your life. You want to save money for a vacation. you know, you want to save money just to go out to eat, go to Kennywood Fright Nights, whatever you want to do, you know, whatever your portion of that is. If people call me up and ask me, hey, what's that magic number, I really don't give them that magic number because there's a lot of variances with that. You know, I will give it to you eventually, but it's, you know, it's based on, okay, all these different things. Because I think, you know, and we were discussing, you know, the flow of this and who was going to go first. I really do think Josie was a good choice to go first because you look at this, and if I just give one number out there, that's only for one benefit. There's all these other things you need to look at. You need to look at how is this going to affect my waiver? How is this going to affect my medical assistance, my Medicare? And unfortunately, all of these things they act differently when you go to work. So you might hear one number like, oh, I can make this much money, and you think everything's good, but that doesn't relate to all the other benefits that you have. So as benefits counselors, what we're supposed to do is kind of break this down for you and say, okay, here's what's going to happen here and here. As with anything in life, sometimes too much information is not good. What I think is critical with our service is the collaboration with other entities, but then also giving people enough information in the beginning to be there to support them throughout their time. Because, you know, you got a kid, shouldn't say kid, a young adult, that, you know, is getting their first job and they're working. Mom is very, very worried about all these different things. You start with some core issues right there to begin with. But you don't want to overanalyze everything because then you've confused the entire situation. Like I have a lot of families that call and they want to know about medical assistance.
Thank you.
You know, the cash assistance is one thing, but the medical is key. So we start with that. Then we branch out to other things. You know, so I really do think it's not kind of like you meet with Joy or a benefits counselor one time, you get all your information, see you later, bye. It can't work that way. You need the intensive follow-along, and, you know, unfortunately, with the size of our caseloads, I can't call you every couple months and say, hey, what's going on? You having any questions? So people need to reach out to me, and then we can look at the situation and see what's going on. I mean, I've had some individuals I worked with 10 years ago, they still call me randomly or email me because something else has developed. And it may be a change on their end, maybe they got more hours, they switched a job, or it may be a change within the Social Security Administration. They switched over to another program. You know, now it's like, oh, what do I do? So this is what we've been trying to do, kind of change that to, you know, hey, you want to have more money coming in, bottom line. That's why we all get up in the morning to go to work. We've talked about this in various points here. You know, what are the barriers to employment? There's fear. You know, oh my gosh, I'm going to go to work, I'm going to lose everything. What, you know, what am I going to do? Wonder if the job doesn't work out. How am I going to get back on benefits? Eligibility criteria. You know, it's a process to get on Social Security benefits. It's a lot of paperwork, it's a lot of phone calls, it's a lot of work, period. So a lot of people are like, hey, it took me X long to get these benefits, don't go and mess it up for me. There's a lot of wrong information out there. It just is. It trickles down from all sorts, you know. Your neighbor said, oh, I went to work and I lost everything, don't go to work. But you don't know that woman's situation. You know, it's like this, that, and the other thing. Complexity within administration of benefit programs. This is really key because no one talks to each other. Social Security doesn't talk to medical assistance. They don't talk to Medicare. They don't talk to food. It's just no one talks to each other. So then you have a situation, like in Josie's case, I would tell her, no, you're going to keep your waiver because you got mod. But then you get that letter from the welfare office, and you're like, ah. And then the phone rings, and Joy, you told me I was going to keep this. Now I got this letter. So then we got to go back through, and it's a headache. But you're fearful because you need that for your medical care. Overpayments. These are huge issues within the Social Security Administration. It's basically Social Security saying, oops, we overpaid you. Now we want our money back. You know, in Social Security, if anyone here has ever seen the letters from Social Security, they're usually right to the point. So if you owe them X amount of dollars, it's in that first line, says, hey, you owe us this much, write out a check, send it in this envelope. You know, sometimes those overpayments are a few $100s, sometimes they're a lot more. So it's kind of like, and then you got to read the next 6 pages if you're, you know, still conscious at that point, it hasn't faded, you know, to figure out, okay, now what do I do? You know, and then the last page is where the phone number is. No early intervention. I mean, there's not a lot of things that Social Security does to try to promote this. You know, like I said, as a benefits counselor, we've been around since 2001. You could probably call up the Social Security office today and say, hey, I heard this Joy lady talk about AHEDD, WIPA. You know, what is that? And they might say, I never heard of it. It's their program. But as we all know, it's a government bureaucracy, so there's a lot of things that are going on. And in Social Security's defense, this is not the only thing they're dealing with. You know, they're dealing with, you know, my husband died, I got to file the death certificate, stop this, give me widow's benefits. You know, they're dealing with all this other stuff. This is not, you know, they might not be asked that question once every 6 months. So this is where it gets into the nuts and bolts of this, of what happens to your benefits when you go to work. And this is, like I said, the very, very, very basic. So there's 2 programs that Social Security operates for people with a disability who need benefits. The first one is SSDI, and that's basically publicly funded long-term disability insurance. Some of us have private insurance through our employers. This is federally funded. So if you've worked and you've paid in taxes and you become disabled, you would qualify for an SSDI benefit if you met the other criteria. Like I said, this is based on work history. The monthly payment amounts for SSDI vary because it varies based on how much you paid in. We all make different amounts of money here. We all pay in different amounts. If we would get SSDI, everyone amount is different.
It would also be if your parents are older, disabled.
Yep. As long as you have someone that you can claim off of. Now, you have to qualify for that, it's called a disabled adult child benefit. You have to have a documented disability before the age of 22. But yeah, you can qualify off of a parent. For this SSDI benefit, there's a 6-month waiting period for cash benefits. So they deem you eligible today, okay, Joy, wait 6 months, then you get your first check. Then there's a 2-year wait for Medicare. So you could be a person in your 20s or 30s, get SSDI, and you could get Medicare. And a lot of times I talk to families and they're like, well, Medicare is for people that are retired. No, it's for people on SSDI also. Bit of trivia. Anyone know who that president is that signed this into law? All right, there you go. We got some older people in the room. When I do this to younger kids, they have no idea. None whatsoever. So a little bit about work in SSDI. SSDI is basically, they look at a time frame on this when you go to work. You have something called a 9-month trial work period. Okay? This 9-month trial work period is basically Social Security saying to you, go to work, make as much money as you want, nothing is going to happen to your cash benefit. These rules here are only for SSDI cash. Okay? Now, part of the confusion with this trial work period is you only get 1 period the entire time you're on SSDI. So I've worked with some people that used this up in the early 90s. That's still on your record. You don't get another one. And the other issue with this trial work period is it would only start if you earned a certain amount of money. For example, this year, it's $840 gross per month. So if you are on SSDI and you have never worked while you've been on benefits, and you go to work this year, and you make $700 a month, you will not start this trial work period. But if you increase your hours and start making $900 a month, then this trial work period would start. Okay. But one thing you need to find out about this trial period is if you have worked periodically since you've been on benefits, you might have used this and never known it. because the amount is $840 per month for this year, but it goes up every year with the cost of living adjustment. So 10 years ago, well, maybe longer, about 15 years ago, it was in the $600 range. So and even in the 80s and 90s, it was like $75, and then it was $200 for a long time. So sometimes, even at the sub-minimum wage level, people have used this and not realized it. So what we can do as benefits counselors is get information from Social Security to find out how you use it. But that's key. I had one guy I talked to the other day, and he's like, well, I got my new trial work period. I'm like, oh, really? How'd that happen? He's like, well, I got a new job. So he thought every time you got a new job, you got a new trial period, because he was thinking he's on a 90-day trial at work. He assumed, and it does make sense. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous that you only get one of these the entire time you're on. I mean, I've worked with some people on benefits for 20, 30 years, and it's way back into the 90s that they've used it. But it's on their permanent record. I don't even know if they still use that term in school, but they did when I was in school.
And Joy, just let me know that when you're talking about it's confusing. Mm-hmm. People use somewhat similar language. We have trial work period too, but that's different. And it doesn't necessarily tie in to what Joy's talking about. So I think that's just an example of some of the complexity of what we have to live through with some situations.
Right. Yeah, that's why there's really no cut and dry answer for some of these questions. It's like, you know, because you just, like if you think, okay, I got this trial work period, that makes sense, but then you add another piece to it, and this and that and everything else. Yes?
Wasn't the trial work period at one time for the 5-year span?
It still is. It still is. But if you use it, you've used it.
Okay.
Yeah. That goes into a little bit more complex stuff we're not going to go into today, but it still is. It's a whole other, that's another 4-hour discussion just on that. So after this trial work period's ended, like let's say you've completed it, you've used the 9 months, then you go into this extended period of eligibility, which is 36 months long. So 3 years, Social Security is going to say, we're going to keep your case open, no questions asked really, but if you earn over a certain amount of money, you're not going to be eligible for your check for that month. That amount for this year per month is $1,170 gross. That's the number that Social Security says is a substantial amount that if you can go to work and make that much or more, you're no longer eligible for your Ssdi benefit. Okay. Now, these numbers that I'm throwing out there to you, 840 and 1170, those are across the board. They don't look into any type of how much are you getting on Ssdi, how much are you know, what's the situation. I met with a guy from Achieva with his job coach a couple weeks ago. He gets about $1,600 in Ssdi a month. So, if he would go to work and make $1,200 after the trial work period, he needs to realize he would be losing those entire checks. So that's, I tell him, I'm like, look at these numbers. I mean, it doesn't, you've got to look at that, and it might be something that he needs to tweak a little bit to say, okay, can I go and make enough to cover that $1,600 that I'm losing in Ssdi, or where do we need to go? And I'm honest with people, because, I mean, I want people to be better off. I mean, this is not to be like, okay, you went to work, you have a penalty now. So this is critical when you look at these situations. And I think collaborating with the agencies is, because the job coaches need to know that. Like if you're going out and, finding a person jobs, and it's like, okay, we got to look at these numbers, because we want to make sure that the providers are, using their best resources too. And I think this comes back to, in Josie's situation also, having benefits counseling early on so that you know what to do before, everything happens, and also so OVR and the providers know, because, they're spending X amount of time and dollars, and if a person finds out, well, I'm going to lose everything, or this is what's going to happen, they might say, see you later, Bill. you know, and then it's going to be, and that's fine, it's personal choice, but it would be nice to know that before Bill has spent X amount of hours and OVR to pay for that, to know that. So this is why it's critical, and I mean, like some of the phone calls and consultations I do, you know, it may seem like it's a minimal type, but it's enough to get you started, and then we go from there. SSI, we all know who that is. Everyone knows who that is. For better or for worse. SSI is low-income, low-resource program for the elderly, no disability status. So if you turned retirement age and you never worked, you qualify for SSI, okay, if you meet the needs-based test. But then it also, as a caveat to that, is for people with disabilities. So you could have anyone from birth to, you know, death on some sort of SSI. But it is low income, low resource. That is key. So you have a disability, but you also meet those two criteria. And SSI, Social Security for SSI, they ask you 10 million questions on the money you have, where it's coming from, who helps you with your monthly bills. They want to know every little thing about you. SSDI, not so much, because you or a parent paid in. Okay, but this SSI is someone that didn't pay in. So let's say, I don't know, let's say I never worked and, you know, I stayed home and took care of the kids, and then something happened to me and I needed to apply for benefits. So they would look and say, okay, Joy does qualify, but she never worked, so let's see if she qualifies for SSI. And then they would ask me all those questions about how much money do you have in the bank, things like that. I may or may not get SSI. I may have a severe disability, but it all comes down to that low income, low resource. Not to get too technical, but in that example, since I'm married, they'd look at my husband's income and the household income. So they look at every little thing. SSI features, like I said, limited access, at application and continuous. This is critical. I've seen a lot of families get burned on this, for lack of a better term. On SSI, you are only allowed to have up to $2,000 in assets. That has been the rule since the 70s. It hasn't changed. Now, there are two types of programs that you can use, a special needs trust, which Achieva does real well with helping people out with, and then there's now also the ABLE, PA-ABLE, which allows you to save money and it's not counted toward that. But a lot of times individuals think, well, SSI has increased their asset limit. They haven't. You have to put it into these special accounts. So on SSI, you get $735 a month. Federal government is saying, go and live on that amount of money per month. Not an easy feat by any means.
That's not much.
No, not much at all. It is below poverty. In most states, there is a supplement. Pennsylvania offers an extra $22.10. Don't spend it all in one place. You know, if you live in a personal care home, those types of things, you get more money because they cost more. But this is a fluctuating program, this SSI. Everything changes monthly. This is a graph that I use because there is an actual SSI calculation that they do to calculate, okay, Joy's out there working and making $500 a month. This is what a new SSI is. But it's Friday morning. No one wants to do math. No, I don't want to do math. So this is something that I show individuals to basically get the point across without having to sit up here and scribble calculations. So in the first column there, the person not working, they're just getting SSI. So they got $735. Now in column 2, that person went to work and started earning $640. They're still going to get an SSI check of $458. So it shows as you make more, the SSI is going to go down, but you're going to have more money overall. But that's a tough sell sometimes because, I mean, you know, I think anyone who gets a paycheck realizes this. You get your paycheck, you're like, okay, I got this much. These are the bills I'm going to pay this go around. When I get paid again, I'll pay these sets of bills. On SSI, a lot of times individuals, they get that check on the first of the month, they pay their bills, then they're down to very, very few dollars. And they got to make that stretch until the next month, which is difficult. I mean, it's tough to stretch money anymore. But what people often tell me, well, my check now went down to $458. I don't have enough money to pay my bills. But you have to restructure how you're paying your bills. You have to do a little bit of different budgeting, which, once again, collaboration comes in through the supports coordinators, the service coordinators through the county, case managers, those types of things to help people say, okay, well, you're going to get your paycheck from Giant Eagle. You can use that paycheck to pay your cell phone bill. But it's something different than the person has done in the past. But overall, you have more money. And what I always tell people is, I'll get out a calendar and say, the first is here and the first is here. That's a long time to stretch money. But if you have two paychecks in between there, you're stretching money from different points. It's a shorter time span. But it's tough, because, and I think Bill and Marci can agree with this, a lot of people see that SSI check go down, freaks them out, which I understand. But you got to look at the big picture. And then it goes the whole way up. In column 6, that person's making $3,000 a month, but they're still, they're not getting their SSI check, but they're making $3,000 as opposed to $735. Josie mentioned MAUD. MAUD is a great benefit that Pennsylvania has. Basically, it's a way for a person who is working but may no longer qualify for a regular medical assistance to buy in to MAUD, and it's really the same medical assistance, it's just a different category. In Pennsylvania here, we have over 100 medical assistance categories, just because, they like to divide everything out as possible. So this is just one category, but it's medical assistance. Now, as Josie mentioned, she does have to pay a premium for this. Sometimes when you talk to individuals and it's like, well, I have to pay $50 a month for this premium, that may seem like a lot because they've never had to do that. But then when you look at the big picture of what is it paying for, it's very, very good insurance. Like for waiver services or just for medications, doctor's visits. Even if you are relatively healthy and, just, gosh forbid, break your leg and go to the emergency room, it's probably like $10,000 now. So it's good insurance, but you do have to pay that premium, and it's paperwork. They like to check up on you every so often to see, hey, are you still working? How much you making? Do we need to readjust our premium? Those types of things. So, how do you get involved with work incentive counseling? We receive referrals from all different agencies. Through our contract through the Social Security Administration, we are the provider in Western Pennsylvania. So we are the WIPA provider, which stands for Work Incentive Planning and Assistance. That's the grant we're under through Social Security. If you haven't already been referred to a benefits counselor and want some things answered, you can reach out to me. I do cover Allegheny County. I have brochures back here because I was not sure where everyone was coming from, but these WIPA programs are national. There's people like me all through the country doing this, but in Pennsylvania, there's actually 3 providers. So here's a little handy-dandy little map. AHEDD covers the red part, Goodwill Keystone covers the white, and DRP covers Philly. So we all basically work the same way. There's a little bit of nuances to us, but we all basically have the same general principle. So there's a phone number on the back that you can call to get hooked up with any of these agencies. But it is helpful, I think, because, it might be something that's a general question, but 6 months from now it could turn into everything else. What we try to do is look at the scenario. What are you doing right now? What do you need to know? And then build upon that. We do verify your benefits with the Social Security Administration. Sometimes we have individuals that come to us, they don't know what type of benefit they're on. They don't know how much they're getting. They don't know about that trial work period, all those things. So we need to get that information. Unfortunately, even though we are a contractor with Social Security, I don't have access to their computers. So I have to do a formal release, and then they send me a snapshot. Some people call me and just, which is not a good thing to do, just like they leave their Social Security number on my voicemail. Like, oh, find this out for me. I'm like, but no phone number. So I'm like, what do I do? So I immediately erase it and hope they call back. But, yeah, we don't unfortunately have access to their computers, which is, you know, a good thing. I don't want, you know, random people looking at my Social Security account. But, you know, we can verify that. And then what we can also do, which we've done a lot in the past, is work as a liaison between the Social Security offices. Because as what Josie said, you know, I might get a release back and the verification. It may seem okay, but I'm like, maybe I ought to call and check on this, because it might not always be. So we have contacts at each of the local Social Security offices, and I call them up and say, hey, I have a question about this. And they're required to get back to us in a timely manner. Now, that doesn't happen overnight, but in a timely manner. So, you know, we want to make sure we're giving you the most accurate information. You know, so it may take us a little while to get that, but I'd rather wait than, you know, mess things up for people. Like I said, the follow-up, at one point when the caseloads were a lot smaller, we were trying to reach out to people periodically. It's just gotten to be at this point we can't do it. You know, there's a lot of people looking for work and want to work, which is great. But, you know, we only have so many people to help with this project, so it takes, you know, we just can't do that. But by all means, if you reach out to us, we will follow up with you. So, I think there might be one more. That's just, work incentive counseling is available for anyone age 14 and up to 65. So at 65, Social Security feels you're ready for retirement. That's a whole other setup. Rules that they don't train us on, nor do I want to know about. But 14 through 65, and basically who have questions about working, planning to work, or already working. It always has to be work-related, and the person already has to be on benefits. I can't advise anyone who's applying for benefits or appealing a decision or, you know, is thinking about doing it. You have to be on benefits. You have to have questions related to work. That's where my training is from Social Security. It's all work-related aspects. It's not on how do you get on benefits. Now that you're on, how do you make this all work through with the work? That was it. So that's it in a nutshell. All right. There you go, Bill.
All right. Well, thank you, Joy. All right. If any of you are still with us, nothing to joy. It's about Social Security. It's a lot of information. So I think I don't know, I'd like to stand, but I think I'm going to sit, and then I'll stand up or something if it feels right. All right. So I'm Bill Frase, and I'm in charge of Achieva Community Employment. I've been with the agency for 13 years. When I started off as an employment specialist, as a job coach here at Achieva, and shortly thereafter, I actually came to operate our Ticket to Work program, which is actually related to the work incentives planning and assistance work that Joy does, and then it's also related to OVR. OVR is a provider under the Ticket to Work program as well. And so I guess part of the reason I was invited here is because of the employment piece and my experience with that program. I've sat in a lot of meetings with Joy and her colleagues from AHEDD talking to people about their work incentives and their goals for employment and things. And, you know, I'm a note taker. I've been taking all kinds of notes as I've been listening to people talk. And so I'm going to bounce around, I think, with some of my thoughts based on what the other folks up here said. That will sort of encapsulate my perspective, and then hopefully, you know, we should have plenty of time to answer any questions here today. You know, one of the things that jumped out to me is, you know, Pennsylvania's been an employment first state for a long time, but basically it wasn't taken seriously. No one acted on it. Governor Wolf was the first person to say, I want to make this a real thing. And so we have the executive order about a year ago, and now we have House and Senate bills that are looking to not just have this be an executive order, but have it something that's going to be codified at the state level. And for me, Employment First is this idea that makes absolutely perfect sense to me. I've been working in employment services for people with disabilities for over a decade, but it doesn't make sense to everyone yet. But it's this idea that everyone is here to contribute. Everyone has things of value that they can offer, skills, talents, abilities, personal attributes, who they are. And you know, when I think about, you know, what it means to be an American, a big part of our identity in this society has to do with our paid employment. Usually, you know, when you go to a party or you meet someone, you know, a lot of times one of those early questions is, what do you do? And we don't answer with, I fix plumbing problems. We answer with, I am a plumber. That is a very powerful statement of identity. And so, you know, my interest in this field is helping people to support, you know, support that positive identity with regard to their work and their contributions in whatever ways make sense for them. And obviously that's different for everyone, and that's part of the fun and part of the challenge of what we do. But that executive order is really about that concept of employment first, and that it applies to everyone of working age, that you know, we're kind of meant and called to contribute in that way. It's a pretty typical thing to do, and that also applies to people with disabilities, which is, you know, why we're here and talking about things like SSI, SSDI, and those Medicare and Medicaid and such. So let's see. Another thought that I had was that I think from Joy's presentation, one of the things that we can take from that is that your individual circumstances are critical. Lots of times people are out there and they will hear stories from other people, like she was alluding to, like, well, I went to work and lost everything, my whole life fell apart, and it was a disaster. And that is not to say that did not happen for that person. But part of the reason that we're here is that there are supports, there are people who know things, there are resources that can help people to get information proactively. Proactive is better. It's ideal because when we're proactive, we can plan for things. People can make informed decisions as opposed to just making decisions based off of the feeling or desire to work, which is wonderful and which is great. But I've worked with a lot of people over the years who just made those decisions without getting the facts and the information, and did end up putting themselves in a worse situation. And that's not what any of us want for anyone. It's not what anyone actually wants, but sometimes people unknowingly do that. And so I just, you know, I want to reiterate that point of there are people that have information and can provide services and supports to help people through this journey because it's not intuitive. These programs can be extremely complex. The interaction effects between those programs can be extremely complex when you're receiving multiple benefits from multiple systems, or your personal circumstances have a certain level of complexity. So I can't emphasize that enough. And I think it's important, too, to recognize that there's going to be a range of possibilities for people depending on what employment goal a person is trying to go for and how it lines up with their benefits. Sometimes it's a slam dunk. They just go together. It's like, oh, this is what you want to do, and at this many hours and at this pay rate, go, you know, but get the information and support to make that informed decision at first. But there's other situations on the continuum where it's like, well, here's the thing, okay, if you work at these levels, then you're probably not going to get workplace benefits at these levels, so then you might have to adjust things in order to make that work for your individual situation so that employment actually improves or increases the quality of your life and does not decrease or minimize or diminish it in any way. And then there's some folks who they have career goals, and their career goals would get them to a place to where they could get off of benefits, but they have to be very careful on their journey getting to that place so that they don't I've called it in the past maximizing work incentives, maximizing employment, where you may have to be very strategic about what you're doing with your work. Like, let's say, I don't know, I wish I can't think of an exact situation off the top of my head that's applying to what I'm talking about, but your goal is to become a medical doctor, okay? That's where you're headed, okay? But to get there, you know, okay, there's schooling and all these things, but maybe it makes sense to have work along the line. Well, let's say you're an Ssdi beneficiary, and you want to be aware of those time frames that Joy was talking about, those amounts of money monthly and things, in order to look at your work activity, because like she said, it's one trial work period. I mean, I could go off on policy and what I want to see happen at the federal level. Like, that was all of my notes coming in here, and I'm not going to go there, okay, because that's not going to help right now. A lot of these things need to change, okay? I think that's clear to everyone in this room, but we all have our lives. We're all doing the best we can right now. So for me, it's understanding the rules of the game, understanding how it works, and operating within those rules to maximize what you can get and reach the goals, whatever your employment and lifestyle and all those kinds of goals are, to get there. And so it might be, I'm going to hold I could earn more, okay, while I'm working toward this goal, but I'm going to keep it under this level right now because I know about these work incentives, and I want to use those work incentives when I'm like starting as a medical doctor. Like, that's when I want to do that. And so I'm going to stay under until this point. Then it's like, okay, now it's time to go. And in the ticket program, I work with people in all those different kinds of situations where I'm like, let's work at this level here, and maybe they had to get education, maybe they needed more experience, maybe they needed a better opportunity, they had one here, and sometimes they had to pass on opportunities because those didn't really fit with their goals. It's like, you know, they looked at it, and there are these gaps, right? I mean, SSI in a way is nice because there's this gradual change. As you increase your earnings, the benefits go down in a way that's sort of almost rational. But when you look at SSDI, it's, you know, the metaphor that I've used when I've done these kinds of trainings and things is, SSDI is a light switch. You flick it, it's on or off. There's no in between. You either got it going or you don't. Now, I mean, in terms of a monthly thing with the earnings like Joy was talking about, it can come on in a month and off in a month, but it's on or off. Whereas SSI, I think of it as a dimmer switch, you know, where it's like, okay, I can increase earnings. Oh, the lights are going to go down a bit, you know, and you can adjust that in that kind of manner. And so knowing those gaps is so critical because, like Joy was alluding to, I mean, you get earnings at a certain level, you can put yourself in a worse situation because it's like, oh, I've just gone over the work incentives. Oh, if it's SSDI, benefit gone. Oh, this is not good, you know. And so that knowledge is critical. And so those are just some of the things I want to reiterate. Let me see if I had anything else here, and then I think we can go to questions. Yeah. Yeah, it's really about taking a holistic look at your individual situation or your family member's individual situation or the person that you're supporting, looking at their individual situation in the context of all of these different rules and policies in order to play the game at the highest level. And I don't use game lightly. It's just we're talking about rule-based systems, and we need, you know, in any game, I mean, if we don't understand the rules, we risk losing. And this is a really serious and important game that, you know, I and Joy and Marci and Josie, that in this field, we are interested in helping people play that game at the highest possible level so that they can live their life at the highest possible level. So with that, I'm going to end my comments and open it up for questions here.
Yeah, before we get to questions, though, you know, as part of our grant from the United Way, we were very fortunate to be able to start a program in July. And when I say we, I mean the Achieva Family Trust. We have a benefits counseling program, and our coordinator is actually here today, Nancy McMillan. So if you guys don't mind, I want her to take a couple minutes to tell you a little bit about it because, again, we're so fortunate to have this collaboration. Part of what Nancy's going to tell you about is the work we do that we're going to be doing with AHEDD and OBR and also the Pennsylvania Health Law Project. So she can take a couple minutes to explain this program. And you know, because there's a lot of questions. I'm sure you're all sitting there thinking, oh boy, who do I start first? Do I do Joy first? Do I do Marci first? Where do I begin? So as soon as Nancy will just take a couple minutes to explain the program, and then we'll take So if you have a chance, pick up one of these flyers. This actually describes our youth program. Thanks to United Way, we were able to get a funding stream that allows us to get this project up and running. So it is a 2-year project. You know, hopefully it'll be extended beyond that. But the whole idea was to help people when they first call in with questions about employment and their benefits, how their employment, their wages is going to affect their government benefits. And as everybody said, those benefits are extremely, extremely important. So we actually decided to form a team approach where I would be a coordinator, but I would have partners who would make themselves available to these consumers to answer their questions. So, of course, OBR is one of our partners, AHEDD, Bill Frase from Vocational, and we also have Pennsylvania Health Law Project as well as the United Way staff to be able to coordinate with me the answers to very difficult and sometimes complex situations of employment. So we have actually been working, and it's up and running, and we have quite a few cases technically that we're working on, very interesting cases, and my go-to people are these people that you see on the panel right here, along with Pennsylvania Health Law Project. So we want to make you aware that if you do happen to be channeled to me first, which happens because people call Achieva, they know that Achieva is involved with employment and vocational counseling, I would then access the other experts. So you would still get hopefully the same answers, but then you may not know about us. So if you do call Bill, you call Joy or someone at OBR, that's fine too. You know, they of course would answer your questions, and if they wanted to, they could direct you back to us, and then we would try to continue a coordination of answering your questions using all of us. So we are going to continue doing this, and feel free to call me directly, Nancy McMillan. Pick up one of these cards. It gives our contact information, our fax number, and et cetera. And then I can certainly help you out with the help of these others. And that gives us all a level of confidence so that, you know, you can then feel fairly sure that the answers you're getting are accurate. Any questions about it? Well, let's open it up to questions. Anybody have questions?
Is there a trial work experience for SSI? No. And also on the SSDI, what are they based on? Like my income or my wife's income when we retired?
Well, your retirement would be based on your own. Or are you referring to
I'm referring to my son. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Well, if whoever retires first, then that child would get it off of that retired parent. But when both parents retire, they go off the higher wage earner. So if your benefit was still higher for him, it would keep it with you, but if your wife's worth, they would switch it. They always have to go off the higher wage earner. Yeah.
The MAUD program, is that limited for individuals that are receiving disability benefits?
No, you can be have a disability and apply for MAUD. The Department of Human Services would do a very, very simple disability determination. So you could receive MAUD and not be on SSI or SSDI.
And for example, if the individual had already been qualified to receive OBR services, would that background need that sort of disability showing that would be necessary?
Yes. Yeah. When I say a simple disability determination through DHS, it's very, very simple. They're basically taking your word for it if you're claiming.
Is there a dollar limit for income?
Yes. Yeah. It's roughly around $45,000 per year. Yeah.
Child.
Yeah.
So if you have a child who is claiming off of their deceased law, and that person got that child got that benefit before age 22 all the way through. But let's say the husband wants to claim survivor benefits at age 60. How then does that percentage, or is that a total?
It would be a total separate claim. That wouldn't affect, yeah. You both could get the highest maximum you could get.
at 100%.
Yeah, for the, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Joy, another common question is about the cover too. If someone's not reporting their wages monthly, like they should be, and they just do it once a year,
Yes.
maybe once every 2 years, and they suddenly realize, there's a problem with the cover too, do they get a letter right away from Social Security stating that?
No. It could take years for Social Security. If you're not, and I don't even know why I didn't say this, but I guess I'm going to, what Social Security is asking people to do, whether you're on SSI or SSDI, is to report your earnings monthly. So people should be reporting either via the old school method of sending them into the local Social Security office. There's an app on smartphones now that sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't. Oh, okay, there you go. Like, get up at 2 o'clock in the morning when no one else is on it. But that's the way you're supposed to be reporting. If you don't report, because a lot of people are under the assumption, well, I'm working, they're taking Social Security tax out, obviously they should know. They will, but it takes sometimes months to years for that to funnel through. So what can happen is, if after 2 or 3 years of working, you've used your trial work period, then they send you a letter saying, hey, we finally figured this out, we're going to do a whole review on your case. That alarms people to no end, because it's like, now what are they looking for? And in the other information that I gave about the overpayment, if you used the trial work period and then went above that 1170, you could be in a severe overpayment. But I've seen them sometimes, it's not as bad as it used to be. It's roughly, right now, probably a 2 to 3 year wait until it funnels through the system correctly.
And let me add to that, like, I knew right when I was switching jobs that I was going to be over that income limit, and I was, like, sending them every month copies of my income statements and letters saying, hey, you shouldn't pay me. It took 6 months for them to stop paying me. And I knew they were overpaying me, so I saved the money. But I have friends at years, and they have, like, thousands from Social Security. It's like, well, if I keep this in my account, I might lose mine. And they're like, well, just save it. You can't just save that. So it ended up being, like, under my mattress or something for a while. But I mean, it's true that you have to be almost ahead of Social Security because they'll get you.
Yeah. What Bill said was being proactive. You really do. So if you're on SSI and you go to work and you're doing what you're supposed to do and send in your pay stubs, but for some reason they're not reducing your check like they should, don't think, well, I'm in some sort of, exempt situation. They should be. So you have to be calling them or reaching out to your benefits counselor to say, hey, what's going on here? Like I said, they have the app on the smartphone. It sometimes works. But this is a very, very old school method. I mean, when you think about this, people at a local Social Security office are opening up envelopes with pay stubs in and putting it in the system. I mean, imagine like one of these, like the downtown Social Security office, how many they could possibly get and how they're doing this. I mean, it should be all online. Like, it should be something like today's Friday, it's a payday for a lot of people. It should be right into the system, like ported over, but it's not. And really, I haven't heard any discussion of them doing that, but it's a very, very old school method.
So if you were just new to the system, but some currently has SSI, is first trials are not, did a work-based learning experience through OER. He hasn't gotten a check yet. It should come. So and again, it's been like 4 hours a week. Do I then go back and post based on SSI that in June he worked 8 hours, in July he worked 12? I mean,
is he still a student?
He is.
Okay. Then he qualifies.
He's going to be 21.
20. Okay. So if he was older and not a student, yes, we'd have to backtrack a little bit for that, because they really want to see when did he earn that money, and he earned it back in June. But he's a student, so he qualifies for something called, write this down, Student Earned Income Exclusion. So that is a program, and I didn't even go into that today because it's a program that Social Security offers. It's a work incentive where they're basically saying a student can try out these jobs through these work-based learning experiences or working at Giant Eagle on their own, whatever. And while they're trying this, because they're a student, they're younger, we don't know what we're doing when we're kids, they can make so much money without their SSI being affected. But the issue with this is you have to ask Social Security for this. So whenever you do get this check from whoever it's issued from, you want to get a letter from the school that he's enrolled in saying, you know, John Smith is currently enrolled for the 2017-2018 school year, and put that in there with a copy of that check. Then Social Security will look and say, oh, he's a student, he qualifies for the exclusion. They might send you a form, ask you some questions. But yeah, yeah, but if you don't do that, and you think, well, that lady told me it's not going to be effective, I got other stuff to do, eventually Social Security is going to see, oh, he made X amount of dollars, then they're going to send you a letter saying, hey, you didn't tell us, now here's a longer form to fill out. And, you know, then it's a little bit like, well, if you don't fill this out correctly, you might lose your benefits. They always put those terms in there. But yeah, any earnings need to be reported to Social Security.
Is that just high school students?
No, it can be in college or truck driving school or.
Doctorate?
But you have to do it before 22.
I thought it was free there.
If it's a paid internship, yeah, it qualifies. Yeah, it's a student. You know, it's really any type of, you know, studies. I mean, like I said, I had a kid go for truck driving school, and it counted. It's for, you know, community college, for any university, high school. Yep. Even if you're still in school, it's still over.
The other thing is, I read I think the Psalms on that.
Mm-hmm.
So it also says if he's in a work training program.
Mm-hmm.
My son finished schooling in August.
Okay.
And his job is still getting funded through an OBR program.
Mm-hmm.
Like his employer is getting reimbursed through an OBR program. Is that considered job training?
It could be.
I sent a letter to SSI, told them this is what my stand, this is where, now I don't know if this letter's sitting on the floor somewhere.
You know.
I said, this is what I believe, you know, and I'm still going to claim an exception for him until his job's probably going to be over at the end of the growing season here, but that's what I'm doing.
It's one of those gray situations. It could be. I've seen it go either way. You might need to get something from the OVR counselor stating what this is, how this is funded, those types of things. The typical school-type models are a lot easier for Social Security to determine eligible. It could go either way, honestly.
And you know, does the student exemption apply for extended summer?
Yeah, it does.
And Joy, on the student earned income exclusion, there's actually an annual limit on the total amount that could be earned gross. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Right. It's not just a blanket exclusion. I just wanted to make sure that people were clear that there's actually a cap on the total amount per year, which a lot of students will not go over.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to, in this context, I just wanted to say something just so we were clear that there is a upper limit on that.
And with everything I have in my head anymore, I don't always remember this, so I do have it. It is up to $7,200 per year.
Pretty good.
So for this year, you could have a student like your son, daughter, your child, they could make up to $7,200 a year, claim this exemption, and still keep their full SSI. And I mean, honestly, if you're in high school or college, I didn't make $7,200 a year. But this is nice because if you start this early, you know, if the kid's going to keep, young adult, is going to stay in school till 21, you could start using this at 18 or 19. And you can use it each year. I mean, and if you found a job that made that much, then your problem would be sheltering the money because you're over the asset limit. But really, that could be a nice chunk of change for people to make.
But that challenge that you mentioned is something that the Achieva Family Trust helps people with regard to special needs trusts and those kinds of things, so that people don't get penalized that way. I'm sorry, Josie?
That would be an ideal able account situation.
Yeah, able accounts, right, or special needs trust.
I didn't hear what he said.
Areas go into an able account.
They could.
Yeah, they could.
Especially under that Social Security, that student deal, like, because there's issues still with the income limit, but assets, that could go right in, so. Because it was within a month of earning it, right?
Well, it would, you can put the earnings into the able and it wouldn't count as an asset.
Right.
And if you're still a student, you would be exempt.
Right.
But if you were not a student, you would still have to do the calculation. So the SSI would be reduced based on those earnings.
Right. Yeah.
But you could put that money in there. Yeah. There's a lot, able is very, very new, so there's a lot of nuances to this that it's a lot.
We're actually, our last speaker program of the year is next month, November 11th, and it's what's new with able accounts and special needs trusts. And we do have someone from the Pennsylvania Treasury Department coming in, because it is changing, and it's so new, and, so hopefully, if you can't make it to attend here, you can listen live, and then it will be put on our website, just like this one. So, yeah.
Is there like a visual flow chart of all of these agencies? So I come from the old model of the IEP, and you kind of do know, you figure out who's in charge and how to coordinate it. Like I didn't even know about a benefits coordinator, and I feel like I'm halfway informed.
There's no flow charts that I'm aware of.
Well, the closest I could even say is Pennsylvania has a healthcare checklist, and there are quite a few, like, resources lists in there. It's online. You would just Google Pennsylvania healthcare checklist. Is that perfect? Absolutely not. I'd also connect with 21 and Able through United Way. But, I mean, once again, there are those checklists for adults.
Yeah. Whenever I dealt with Social Security, I say to them, what do people do that don't have anybody help you? Every single time, it just blows my mind.
Yeah. It's a very complex system. I mean, it's beyond, even like, Josie alluded to with a doctorate. I mean, like I talk to parents, they're professionals, they're this, they're that, and it's like, why is this so difficult? It's unfortunate for people that don't have an advocate.
Like people with disabilities or don't work, right?
Mm-hmm.
I said that last week.
Yeah.
Health complex. If you work, it just becomes a nightmare.
Yeah, it's simpler. A lot of times it's simpler and easier not to work. And so, yeah, it takes courage, gumption, determination, and a lot of help and support for people to succeed with employment. And I've gotten to see lots of people do that. It is possible with the right support. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For themselves, it's better.
We have a question online, I think. Yeah.
We have a few.
Oh.
The first one is regarding Julie's presentation. Is the earnings that were shown on the slide gross or net of taxes and deductions?
It's all gross earnings. Social Security looks at gross.
Unless you're self-employed.
Yeah.
Next one is if you earn too much on SSDI by mistake and started the transition trial work clock, is there any way to undo the mistake or stop the clock?
Well, if you've used 1 month of the trial work period, and then you realize that and go below the 840, you've only used 1 month. You have to earn $840 9 times for it to count. So it can stop, but if you figure this out in the 8th or 9th month, you're a little bit.
But you can use those months whenever, like one in 2017. one in 2018. Once they start, it doesn't mean use them all at once. You can split them month by month.
Yeah.
Next, what is the income cap an individual can make and still be eligible for mod?
Well, the earned income is around $45,000.
And can you explain the Ticket to Work program?
You go.
All right. I will.
I answered too many questions.
I know. Well, yeah, that's always how it goes. All right. So this is Bill Frase with Achieva Community Employment. So the Ticket to Work program is a program that's funded by Social Security. It's completely on an outcomes basis with the funding, meaning that providers, they're called employment networks under the program. Achieva is an employment network under the Ticket to Work program, as is OVR is considered an employment network too, right, Marci? So, yeah, and feel free if I've missed anything, just jump in. But the Ticket to Work program from a provider agency like myself, not being OVR, basically, we would receive funding to help people achieve competitive employment at levels that would cause their cash and possibly even their medical benefits to cease. So most of the people that are interested in that program, it's a pretty small group of people because there's a lot of people don't feel confident or are not interested in achieving employment and income at those levels that would cause those benefits to stop. But that's the ultimate goal of the program for folks that you know, where they'd assign their ticket to an agency like us. And the time frames can take a while. I mean, a person's goal could be, I'm going to get some education, and I'm going to do some internships, and I'm going to do these things, and it could be a 3-4 year plan. The one benefit that you can get through the Ticket to Work program that you cannot get any other way is the suspension of there's two ways to get off of Social Security benefits. The one is the one we focused on this entire time, which is your earnings. How much you earn can cause your Social Security benefits to either be reduced or cease. The other way is through a medical review. Everyone receiving Social Security benefits is on a cycle of medical exams to determine their eligibility for those services on an ongoing basis. When you participate in the ticket program, you cannot get off of those benefits because of a medical review, which determines you to be medically improved so that you're not eligible. And as long as you're following I believe it's called Individual Plan for Employment still, Individual Work, that's OVR, Individual Work Plan, IWP, I think it is. Anyways, as long as you're following the plan that you established with the Ticket to Work provider, with the employment network, if you're following that plan, then your medical reviews are suspended and you can't lose benefits for that reason. So hopefully that answers the question. I don't know if you guys have anything to add to that.
No, one thing I wanted to, I'll check with Joy first, is when someone's in high school and they're up for review, does that still hold true with if we have already developed an individualized plan that allows them to maintain the benefit? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so that applies to IPEs under OVR as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the ticket came about way back in the day to really find people that weren't already hooked up with an agency. It was kind of like a PR method that Social Security did to say, hey, if you're out there in, North Hills of Pittsburgh, but never heard of OVR, never heard of Achieva, never really got involved in any type of disability-type organization, this is an option for you. So it was kind of to generate some people that we weren't touching. I mean, because I get a lot of calls about this ticket, and they're like, well, I'm with OVR, but now I got this thing about my ticket to work. What does that mean? I'm like, you're good to go. You're hooked up with OVR. That's what you need. Do I need to do this? It's all a voluntary program.
Yes.
But, as with anything, Social Security, they don't explain things real well with this kind of stuff. But it's just a way to give people some options. It's nothing you have to do. But it's just an option for you, and then what you can do too is your ticket's held with OVR while they're providing services, but after you're successful with them and they close your case, you can then switch your ticket over to another agency to get some additional supports if you need. So it just is really, it's a case by case, but it's not something that you have to do.
Yeah, a big piece of it was really that choice piece, because in many areas, OVR was the only place that people could go in through the front door and say, I need rehabilitation, vocational rehabilitation services, and the ticket opened up a broader marketplace with this idea of employment networks. And an employment network could be, you know, like Walgreens is an employment network because of the number of people with disabilities that they hire, then they receive compensation for doing that. You know, and Achieva's been an employment network since I think about 2003 or 4, somewhere in that range. We've been an employment network and serve people under that program. So hopefully that answers the question.
The next one's kind of long, so I'm going to get one. My daughter recently received a letter from Social Security saying her Social Security auxiliary benefit decreased by $80 because it was incorrect since January. The new amount begins in November. When we called the local Social Security office for explanation, he couldn't explain. Should we pursue appeal?
Yes. The easy answer to that is yes. If they can't tell you why it happened, I don't really know why that would happen. Those calculations are pretty set in stone. So yeah, I always would recommend to a person to appeal. I mean, the worst they can say is, hey, you know what, it was still our mistake, but, you know, yeah, I would appeal that.
What are the asset limits for an individual on SSDI?
There are no asset limits for SSDI.
Is there a trial work program for SSI, and if a person is using OVR, can they also use Achieva?
There is no trial work period for SSI, and then I'll let you guys battle.
So, I mean, Achieva, I mean, we're an employment network under the Ticket Work program, but OVR is one of our primary partners. So oftentimes we will work with individuals that we refer to OVR for services, and a lot of times OVR is working with people that they will refer to us for services like, community-based work assessments, job coaching to help people get jobs and those kinds of things. And Marci, I don't know if you want to say anything else that way. And Achieva, by the way, is one of many providers in the Pittsburgh area of those kinds of services.
Yeah, this is Marci with OVR, and I would just extend comment on that, that oftentimes folks are working with both organizations because of the collaboration of how the federal funding works. But it is individualized, and it depends on what specific service is being requested from Achieva, and then how that works in collaboration with OVR. That would require us to just work through that and make sure that we are aligning it correctly so that we're not limiting someone's whatever service that individual needs.
Yeah, that's a good point in that, because I do get calls all the time from folks, and sometimes we have what someone needs at Achieva and it makes sense and we can refer to OVR, and sometimes that's just not the case. That given where someone's at with the conversation, it's really clear that, another provider, another service, given where the person's at, makes more sense at this point. Yeah.
Special needs trusts, are they limited to individuals that are receiving disability benefits, or would it be like MOD?
I'll refer to the people in the back of the room on that.
There's no limit. Anyone who's above $2,000, we talk to that money, whether they're on SSI, SSDI. The only thing we don't do is put wages directly. Wages are going to come directly into a special needs trust. It has to come to the individual first, and then they can put it in after it reaches their bank account.
So in that regard, you wouldn't be able, the individual would not be able to put wages in order to reduce their wages for medical assistance eligibility.
That's right.
Correct.
That's very important.
But you wouldn't need to be limited to receiving disability benefits in order to set up a special needs trust.
Correct. You wouldn't have to be limited. Anybody. Some people come into a special needs trust without SSI or SSD eligibility, but all we need is a doctor's recommendation or a doctor's diagnosis.
Sort of like we talked about with MOD.
Yes.
But when you're short on the SSI reduction,
recall, I assume the same ratio applies. My son gets a lower benefit. It's the same ratio. The other thing is, too, what point here does he lose his medical?
He would lose his medical when he hits something called the Medicaid Threshold, which is roughly $37,000
Of income.
of income per year. Let me get you the exact number. Once again, I used to be able to remember this stuff. It is $37,567 per year. That's called a Medicaid threshold, and that is state-specific. So what that means is, obviously, if he was earning close to that, he would not be getting an SSI benefit, but he would maintain Medicaid eligibility through SSI, doesn't even need to go into MOD. So whatever he gets through medical assistance would stay the same. If he's on waiver funding, it would stay the same. Yeah. And this number, that number changes every year, too, when they adjust the cost of living.
What's the name of that program?
That is called the Medicaid Threshold, but that is only for people on SSI. That is SSI specific.
Oh, I have one real quick one. This is a very common question. Someone is getting paid weekly, and someone has 5 paychecks. How does that affect the fees? Who said that, and does it decide that?
Do we want to repeat that question? The question had to do with people receiving paychecks on a weekly basis, and we have 5-week months, and how do those calculations work with regard to adjustments and things with regard to SSI and SSDI?
So for SSDI, Social Security looks at when you earn the money. So they look at the calendar month, the 1st through the 31st. So what did you earn in that month? SSI looks at when you receive the money. So typically, the 5 pay months, or if you're paid every other week, you get 2 months out of the year, you get 3 paid. It affects SSI generally more than it does SSDI. Because in a typical month, you might have 4 paychecks coming in, and they do the calculation. Now this month you have 5, so there's more money dropping in that month because you received it in that month. So the SSI would be reduced a little bit more. Now, when you go back to the next month and you go back to your 4 regular pays that month, they would adjust it again based on those 4 pays. But SSI is when you receive the money, the pay dates. SSDI is when you earn the money. So that more goes through the pay periods, like the 1st through the 31st. It's very confusing. And I will say this. The SSI usually is pretty accurate with when they calculate this because it's a simpler calculation. But if you have someone that's on SSDI and has that 5 pay or the 3 pay month, it usually gets messed up for them. So they might, Social Security might say, hey, you used a trial work month, but they didn't calculate it the right way.
Yeah, and I just, in this context, if it's not clear to everyone, you know, I'm doing my best to point out the obvious. The Social Security Administration administers both SSI, Supplemental Security Income, and Social Security Disability Insurance, and it's under the same thing. So people get very confused, and the acronyms are so similar. They are completely separate, different programs. If that hasn't been made clear about it, I'm just going to be Captain Obvious and be like, they're completely separate, different programs.
Yeah.
Any questions? Any last questions?
If we transfer from SSI to SSDI, what is it? Is there any option for medical in SSDI? Or is he on his own?
No, I mean, he'd get Medicare after the 2-year waiting period. And depending on how much he would be getting on SSDI, he may qualify for some type of medical assistance. He's in a category now because he's SSI eligible, but he could switch over to another category, or if he's working, he could buy into the MOD program.
I became dually eligible when I switched, which was great. It did a lot more. So it was actually a really great switch.
What you just described about reporting, income for SSI, is not a big thing. I mean, but should I haven't been doing that. I've been doing it based on his hours of work. Should I switch back? Should I have to wait, or should I just be consistent?
Well, I mean, are you sending in the pay stubs, or you're doing the app in the middle of the night? I mean, so you're using, so what are you using then?
I'm just saying he worked 31 hours a month at this rate, I report it.
Oh, okay. You really should tie that into the pay stub.
So I should report it when the day he gets his pay.
Well, it's a monthly reporting, so what you're required to do here we're in October, so by the 5th of November, you are supposed to report all of his earnings that he received in October, that first week in November. You should be lumping this all together. Okay.
But I'm just saying he worked 30 hours in October at this rate.
You should, no.
It should be he earned, right? I mean,
Right.
it should be
It should be
he
what
earned this much this month, not how many he worked,
Right,
because they
right.
don't line up under SSI the way that they would under
Right.
SSD. Yeah.
I'm confused.
It is confusing. It is
I'm not
confusing.
sure about the pay. If he gets a pay stub in November for October.
Then but it's reported for November, because he actually earned the money in November. He earned it in October because he's on SSI. So that counts for earnings in November, not October.
Yeah, it should be in SSI, you're reporting the actual earnings, yeah, not like hours worked or something, which would apply more to SSDI, yeah.
So in his example, he should be reporting everything that has an October pay date.
Correct.
Yeah.
For October.
Correct.
Even if some of that was September.
Correct.
And
Yeah, if it was earned in September, yeah.
But SSDI would be the opposite.
The opposite, yep.
So you got it.
Completely separate program.
You got it. You cleared everything up. The ending on a high note.
You upload, like, pay stubs on that app, or?
yeah.
No, I mean, the app is very simple. This gentleman probably can tell you more. All you're doing is typing in your number. You just type in, like,
It's actually great. I think it's really cool.
well, I'll tell everyone to get up.
I mean, I've only had it not work once.
Oh, okay.
It works. I do it. I'm a little funny, but it does work better later at night.
Oh, please. Well, the other thing, too, is, Social Security is requiring you to report this that first week of the next month. So if you catch it and everyone's doing that, I mean, I guess it slows it down or bumps people out. I mean, I'm not a techie person by any means. But, yeah, I've had some people that just are, but no, you don't upload it. I mean, you just go in and type in $454.
Save your pay stubs, right?
Yeah, in case they ask for them.
But there's no app for SSDI.
No.
Oh, that's only
Yeah.
No?
Go ahead. One thing you had brought up is that if you earn so much, under SSI, you could disqualify yourself under MAUD, because MAUD has a asset cap to it. So if you keep those earnings in some savings account that you did while you were working, what is the cap under MAUD asset earnings? Last I knew it was like $10,000.
That's what it is.
Still 10,000.
10,000 total. So if you save up enough money,
Yep.
you can disqualify
Right.
yourself.
That's where ABLE could fall into place.
But only if you were under 26 when you go under 8.
Uh,
Didn't help her.
That's a whole other story, but yes, you're right.
But you have to be disabled before the age of 26, isn't it?
Right. Yes.
And they're looking at raising that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's been discussed, right? Raise that age because we're veterans and.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So if you're an adult, you can't disable as an adult.
Yeah,
Then you might have to get a
special needs.
trust.
This or that or that or this or.
It makes it hard to work and then earning and saving money.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, but honestly, I mean, before Special Needs Trust and the ABLE Act, I mean, the $2,000 was even worse. I mean, because, we're all taught to save money, but $2,000, I guess in the 70s was a whole lot different than it is now, but they haven't changed it. So, I mean.
There are like programs like PASS and stuff. If you're saving up for something related to your job, like a car or something, it can be excluded, but that's, you need to get your OVR and all that stuff, or you'll get in trouble.
You won't go to jail.
That's like,
You won't go to jail.
That's like my theme. If you don't trust someone, you'll get in trouble. You'll go to jail.
But Social Security really doesn't put you in jail. I mean, I've had a lot of people that's a fear because, like, am I going to go to jail? I didn't report my earnings. I'm like, no, they're going to make you pay it back, but there is no jail.
They don't want me and my nerves.
They're not going to put you in jail.